Welcome, everybody, to Athern Extra. Not Train Tuesday, it's Athern Extra. I want to thank you guys for joining us. Special kind of episode we're doing tonight. We're going to be concentrating on the red, white, and blue. For those of us in the States or those of us of United States birth and heritage that are serving overseas, this is going to be a special holiday for you because America celebrates their independence. And we're going to be talking about some really interesting prototype stuff tonight, but mainly we're going to be talking about two locomotives. One that really did happen and has come back, and that's 5704, Santa Fe SD45-2, that soldiered on into the BNSF era and has just recently undergone a beautiful restoration to look as it did back in 1976. And we're going to talk about a bicentennial locomotive that never was, but could have been. So many times in our history, there have been one decision or one vote that has made something that could have happened, not happen. And we're going to talk about that tonight. I've got some special guests with us here tonight, but before we get started, hey, let's do what we always do. Let's see who's joining us tonight. Let's see. I've got Ronald, Zach, Robert, Chris, Anthony, Kaylin, Donnie, Ronald, Derek Glass is here. Brian is here. We've got Michael and Ronald, and we've got Peter. So thanks for joining me. As you can see, I've got a little bit of something here behind me. We're going to be talking about both of those locomotives. And we're going to be talking, like I said, about everything red, white, and blue. So stay tuned throughout the program. We're going to be going ahead and answering questions that you might have or comments that you might have. Looking forward to interacting with you guys and spending your Friday night. This time we're not in the workshop. We're in the studio, but looking forward to talking to all of you. So one more time of shout outs and then we'll get the show started. We've got Dominic. We've got Mark. We've got Patrick, Dan, the Rail Fan Man, separate character there. Terry's here. And who else do we have? Matt, Ronald, Peter, Michael, Richard, Terry. We've got a full house again here tonight, so thank you for joining us. Wow, we've got some great stuff to talk about. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, the first man that I'm about to introduce, I don't think he really needs much of an introduction. He's known for his exploits throughout the country, internationally known as a man of mystery. He's also known as the man that brings us quality entertainment every month. Whether it be online or through one of the many publications he edits. Man without any introduction, Tony Cook. Good evening, Tony.
That was quite an introduction, Jim.
Well, it's a big show. I don't want to show my age here, but a really big shoe. So I wanted to bring that up there for you. How are you doing tonight?
I cannot believe it's July 1st.
I can't either.
I still been, I go places and I see we will be closed for the 4th of July holiday. I'm like, wow, why'd they put that sign up already? It's like, well, because that's now. It's like, wow, this summer is just flying by. Yeah.
It really is. It seems like just yesterday we were celebrating Memorial Day, which for a lot of us, at least, especially I think in the Midwest, that's kind of our beginning of summer, if you will. And now we're already at the July 4th weekend. So
it's hard to believe. How now you're over like in the kind of northern central Illinois. I'm over in the northwest corner of Missouri. I felt like our May felt like March. It was
definitely.
Chilly. I mean, there were so many days I'm like, I am not turning on the furnace. It's the latter part of March. And then I'd realize the house is like, 58 degrees. I'm like, okay, I'll turn on just for an hour. And then we hit June and bam, 100 degrees. How was your May and June been? Were they like that?
It was the same way. My lovely wife and I went to New Orleans in May for our honeymoon, and it was beautiful down there. It was not too hot, not too cold, but we came back to Illinois, and like you said, we had to turn the furnace on. It was kind of a letdown. May's usually warmer here, not so much. It was very wet as well. I don't know about out your way, but like you said, June came in, and suddenly, somebody turned the thermostat up.
Exactly. I feel like we went from like March to August, and it's like, hey, whoa, we missed like my 3 favorite months there. So,
yeah. So now, briefly, for those of us that are joining us, for those who may not know about you, Tony. Tell us quickly what it is you do and what you're known for.
In fact, this past month, June, would have been my 11th anniversary doing Model Railroad News, I think it is. Which is a monthly publication covering all scales of new model train products with news and product reviews. And then I also do the quarterly HO Collector, which is in its 6th year now, which doesn't seem possible. We had someone email the other day asking, is there a listing or index for the magazine? Which, as I first read that, I'm like, why? I mean, it's like, oh yeah, I guess there's enough issues now that there are questions of, did you ever cover this or that? And it's like, oh yeah, I guess we do need to do that. And then I do the quarterly diesel era that White River picked up a year ago now on prototype locomotives. So whatever train stuff it is, whether it's new stuff, old stuff, real trains, I'm covered. I just get up in the morning, make a cup of coffee, and it's like, well, what do you feel like today? Old trains, new trains, or real trains? And sit down and do it.
Yeah, and it's not uncommon for you to be at a train show pretty much anywhere in the country, too. You travel a lot.
I do get around a little bit. Yep.
That's great.
Which is part of the fun. Part of the fun. And there's always more train trips that are on the bucket list that my assistant editor, Shane Mason, and I are still wanting to get to Montana Rail Link before it's painted out. So
yeah, that's seems hard to believe that that's actually happening, but good point. Speaking of Shane, I think he's our next guest. Now he works with you over at Model Railroad News.
He does. Yep.
And he's a as I've been told, he's a big fan of N-scale.
He is an N-scale person. He is, like yourself, to an extent that, yes, he is fascinated by the 1/160th reproductions in the hobby. And he's a big rail fan. We go out doing rail fanning around the Kansas City area. He and I are both located in Kansas City. So, yep.
Well, let's bring him on board. I think he's in the green room, if you will. Let's bring aboard Shane Mason. Shane, welcome aboard. How are you tonight?
Hi, how are you all?
Doing good. Shane, for those of our guests that maybe have not heard of what you do, can you kind of give us a description of what you do and what you're into?
So when I'm not at my actual job, I come home and I work with Tony. I'm the assistant editor for Model Railroad News, as well as I contribute to a lot of the other White River production stuff with whether it be photos, product stuff, any support that I can give. So the one nice thing about working with White River is everybody's pretty well a tight-knit group. So we're all always kind of working on something with somebody. So, but mostly majority of my job is photography, in-scale reviews, some of the electronic stuff, just any way I can support Tony in the magazine.
That's great. So we were just saying too that you were an avid N-scaler. Do you dabble in other scales, or are you strictly N-scale?
Well, to say, excuse me, to say that I'm a big N-scaler is kind of backwards. I don't think you can really be a big N-scaler in 1/160, but no, my primary scale is N-scale. I've got a little bit of HO, a little bit of O. I think that's something that kind of everybody goes through in the hobby is you end up with one or two cool things in another scale, but primarily N-scale.
Well, it looks like you got some fans out there. Kevin says, hey, it's Shane Mason. Yeah, Shane. I got to meet Shane last year at the St. Louis RPM meet, and we had a good time. Shane and I talked a lot about N-scale because, of course, I got my start really in N-scale. So, yeah. So, Shane, we're going to talk to you in a little bit, too, because I know you've got some cool photos to share. But I wanted to kind of go back to, I guess you'd say, the impetus of the show. Yes, it's July, but in the model railroad world, the Bicentennial stuff really seems to sell really well. Tony, I know you've probably got some insight on that with you working through HO Collector and, of course, Model Railroad News. What have you found through the years? The
thing that surprises me on the Bicentennials is how it never goes away. I mean, you would think it would be something that would have, kind of come and gone. The interest you wouldn't think would be the same. I mean, I think we'll get through the Tricentennial, and we're still going to have hobbyists wanting Bicentennial, which I can't imagine now what paint jobs we'll have for the Tricentennial. But anyway, the Bicentennial models, and I think because of that, where they hit 1976 for the U.S. 200th anniversary, I was 10 years old when the Bicentennial hit. So, man, you talk about being at the right age for model trains. And I hear that a lot from HO Collector. And just when you ask a lot of people, what was your first train set? You'll hear that so many times. It was something red, white, and blue. That kind of went hand in hand and just stayed popular. And now with the quality of models we have available to us, boy, the Bicentennial releases we've had, I mean, from Athern alone in the last 20 years with all the ready to rolls. I mean, I was thinking about it today and trying to count all the ones I have, from like that Cotton Belt tunnel motor, the N&W SD45, the ICG Jeep 38. I just kept coming up with more that it's like, wow, I hadn't realized all these I'd accumulated over the years. But what we've seen of late is, you know, just stunning stuff. And again, it's that whole nostalgia, the memory thing, which always is in trains and model railroading, but the Bicentennial stuff just kind of adds even more to it. And like I say, if you were the right age to have been there and seen some of it, I mean, boy, everything in the mid 70s was red, white, and blue, and 1776 was just plastered on all sorts of stuff. So
yeah. I mean, for the younger guys out there, and Shane, you're going to be one of them. I remember even fire hydrants were red, white, and blue.
Yeah, yes. Yeah.
Everything was red, white, and blue.
Everything. Yeah.
It's probably why I like those colors so much, because as a kid, I mean, you saw them everywhere. And, as a child, I was literally a child in the 70s. I didn't really know why there was such a, draw to that. I didn't understand what was going on, but I certainly remember my first Bicentennial experience, if you will. So with that being said, Tony, why don't you take a little bit, give us a Bicentennial story. I know you've got one.
I was trying to think today of the Bicentennial locomotives that I saw in the flesh at the time. And it's surprisingly, the list is not gigantic. I think there's only like 3 or 4 that I actually saw back then. Because unlike today, where it seems like you'll see pictures of, these heritage units, or like the KCS Veterans unit, it can be out in the Northeast someplace on a train. It's like, how is that possible? Back then, it just wasn't the case. Look at Derek there, 1-year-old during the Bicentennial. Man, I remember, I think I was talking with Ken Bianco of Train World one evening on a show, and I didn't think about it, but when I said that, I asked him, like, well, how old are you at the Bicentennial? And he's like, I wasn't born. And it's like, oh yeah, man. I think Ken's early mid 80s or something. So yeah. Anyway, but yeah, it's surprising. I've got some pictures to share. These of Bicentennials. Let me see if I do this right. I've been working on a new computer, as I said. So there, I think I have a shared screen up.
Oh, what do you have here? Oh my!
I picked out. You said everything was painted red, white, and blue.
Yes.
And you mentioned, we were talking motive power.
Right.
Well, here's some classic red, white, and blue motive power. This is the 72 Mustang. And this, again, 72. This is kind of, it's interesting because this is really when Bicentennial fever starts to hit 4 years before the event. Like the Seaboard Coastline 1776, I think it's outshopped this same year, 72. And Ford did, this is the big Mustang when it got as big as it ever got. 72 had this color thing, as did the Maverick and Pinto.
That's right.
Out of those 3, my dad bought the Pinto.
Yeah, we knew Derek would like that because he's a fellow Mustang owner.
This is the car. Wow. This is the car we had, and it had a crank sunroof. Had like a little. I remember you brought down and it cranked open, and I thought it was really cool. And this also 72 for car buffs, is the last year we had a cool face on a car, and by that I mean the 73 brings in those 5-mile-an-hour little bumpers. So this look on cars totally changes right after that. But you had like Ford doing this. There's, I think, a Chevy Caprice that was done closer to 76 that's in those colors, and I think Chrysler might have done something, but these
Jeep had done some too. Jeep had a special CJ5.
So there's some really cool cars, but obviously the locomotives
look at that.
And now these are just some pictures that I sourced from on the internet and other places. As I was going through, I do have some that are from White River and some from my own collection, but like this is a Steve Patterson picture I found on Rail Picks. And this is interesting to see because there is the full set. And no,
Right.
this kid didn't just go nuts and buy a bunch of the Athern. This is what Santa Fe really had. They painted
Sure.
this group of 5 SD45-2s, 5700 to 5704, all got painted up in this scheme, which, of course, 5704, we're going to get to see Shane's pictures that were just taken at Union Station here in Kansas City on a night shoot they set up of the restored one. But here they are back in the day, the set of these, as they were originally with the presidential seal on the side there on a big placard. And what I heard was like the washing, the units as they went through, that was always a decal and it got peeled off and they couldn't maintain it. And so you'll see later pictures where that's just like a silver or white circle and then it's done away with. But
Okay.
this is early when it still had the full seal on the side, kind of the as delivered look for these. And boy, they were spectacular units.
Yeah,
and
beautiful.
And Athern is doing that. And of course, I picked this one out for you.
Oh, look at that. I remember that. Yeah.
Boston and Maine Jeep 38, which again, I don't think I have this, but I think Athern has done this as a ready to roll, if not a Genesis. And then behind it is the American Freedom Train, but
not the GS4 though.
The GS4, that's that Reading T1.
T1, yeah, that's the one I saw. And in fact, if you zoom in, you're not too far from my hometown. That looks like Manchester.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, that's Manchester, New Hampshire. I saw it in a little tiny. It's not even a town anymore. Ironically, the town is gone. But back in '76, it was still struggling. Potter Place, New Hampshire, which is outside of Andover, and I saw this same setup. And of course, as a kid, I was just like, "Well, it's a train. It's cool. I don't care what color it is." But nice catch.
It was really awesome. I saw the Freedom Train at the Arch in St. Louis. It was parked down there, and I think the Mopac units were there with it.
Oh, wow.
And remember, it was really awesome. The thing, you went through it so quick. It was on like a conveyor belt thing that took you through the cars, as I recall, if I'm remembering right. And it seemed like it was just really quick. You didn't have time to really get to look at things
I
wanted
to.
A lot of roads did multiples, and then some of the Bicentennials ended up getting replaced along the way. BN is one I think that had both. There was 1776, 1876, and 1976 that they painted. So they painted 3, and I can't remember. I think it's one of the EMD units ran into either a problem or a wreck and is repainted. It might be this SDP 40, maybe the unit that got. So there's technically 2 of them, and these stayed around for several years. This is one, as I came across this picture, this is one I actually saw. We were on vacation in Colorado, and I think it was a year or 2 after the Bicentennial, so like maybe 78 or even as late as 79.
Oh, wow.
And saw this Colorado and Wyoming unit, a Jeep that got painted. And this was one thing on the Bicentennial, as much as you had the Class 1s, with a few exceptions, like Shane and I's favorite road, UP, didn't technically have a Bicentennial.
Right.
You guys are correcting that now in HO at least. And then I think about our second favorite railroads, Rio Grande, they also didn't have a Bicentennial. So, but anyhow, these little roads seem to just go crazy, and everybody painted anything they had into Bicentennial colors. Conrail was brand new at the time of the Bicentennial, a couple months old. In fact, Conrail inherits either like that Boston and Maine or maybe the Erie Lackawanna units. Like Erie painted a few units in Bicentennial, and they don't make it to the Bicentennial, that the railroad's gone and part of Conrail. So that's kind of an odd thing, but there's a Pensy GG1 repainted. And of course, Amtrak painted everything Bicentennial and did so from day one. So
exactly.
We're ahead of the game. This one I always thought was interesting because at a glance, your first thought is, well, that's just the Seaboard. It's like, wait a minute, it's 6-axle. I'm thinking, and again, this is one I think that was this a New Jersey Transit? Do you remember on that, Jim? I think this was maybe either Erie, it was an Erie Lackawanna, New Jersey Transit. And it's like,
I'm not sure. Maybe one of our viewers knows, but
I'm sure somebody will chime in and say, I think it's like a U34CH or something. It's an odd. And again, you see it lettered Conrail there in the one red band, but I think it started out as either NJ dot or was something else.
Oh, here we go. Rock Island.
And then you had roads that had Bicentennials that couldn't afford it. Well, and this was done by that one Chicago, it's there on the door, the 20th Century Limited Group, I think. There, yeah. Philip is saying NJ Transit was that U-boat. Yeah, I thought it was, that it was not technically a Conrail. That Rock got this painted for him. Although they apparently had a great deal on blue paint, even though they were running out of money, that they painted so much stuff from 75 to 80 that we still see some of it today. And I don't know who was in charge of that budget when they were basically about to run aground there. But this is an interesting one, although one I never really liked. And I've talked to other people that said too that, yeah, that's a scheme that was not a favorite.
Look at that.
There's the Eries. That's at SDP 45 and an SD 45. I think you guys have done both. And that I say SDP 45, it's really not. It doesn't have a steam generator. It was bought and put on that frame to have a big fuel tank, so Erie could get it between points on their line from the east to Chicago. So it's kind of an interesting piece and one that Athern's done.
Right. Oh yeah, Grand Trunk.
This is an interesting one because was there any non-U.S. roads that had a Bicentennial? And while Grand Trunk is a U.S. road, but of course it's a CN subsidiary. So I guess this is as close as you get to saying here is either like a Canadian or Mexican painted Bicentennial would have been this Grand Trunk with the cool, that kind of cartoon eagle beak on the side, which I always thought was cool. This is one I think this is the only Bicentennial I was actually in, and it visited St. Louis. And again, it was a second. The first ICG 1776 left Chicago on the main line to New Orleans, and it had an accident with, I think, a gas truck and was destroyed. And this was the second one. This is the replacement unit. And as you can see, there's steps leading up to the engineer's side. And that's about how I remember seeing it. I got to see it in Illinois on a display one time, and there was a placard inside the cab for the engineers that were involved in that accident, on the first one. So this is another replacement Bicentennial. And Athern, you guys have done this a couple of times. I know I have a ready to roll, but I'm thinking, is this maybe also a Genesis now has been done?
That's a GP38AC. I don't believe we have.
Okay.
Now that may be something we consider in the future, though. Well, while I've got you real quick, Glenn Powell commented, and we want to clear something up here real quick. He was saying Boston and Maine was never part of Conrail. Yeah, we know that. What Tony is referring to is Conrail had a almost verbatim paint scheme on their, I believe it was a GP40. My memory's not as good, and of course, me being a Boston and Maine fan, I remember the 38-2, but actually, Conrail's was almost a dead copy for us. So that's what you were referring to.
What was it? Was it just a Conrail Bicentennial? Maybe.
Yeah, it was a standard Jeep, and it looked identical to the Boston and Maine, but it had some subtle differences. But from the red and white stripes on the nose, the blue cab with all the stars. But that's basically what Tony was referring to when we were talking about the mini.
Yeah, I got confused there. But yeah, the Boston, I always had the Minuteman logo on its nose in black.
Right.
Yeah, that Conrail's an interesting one that I kind of forgotten. And then this one, and I think there's two of these. And this to me is like the greatest PR idea that whoever at Kansas City Southern said, hey, let's take a diagram of one of our units and we'll give it to school kids and let them color it, and then we'll make that as our Bicentennial. Is a great idea. Until apparently you had a stack of these that had been done like this, and someone should have said, whoa, time out. But why did we give them crayons that weren't anything other than red, white, and blue? And no. So I think, as I said, that one Rock Island Bicentennial gets some knocks. But again, fantastic idea, wonderful marketing move. But, oh, wait a minute, we're not going to paint that. Yeah. and I didn't realize till recently, but I think there's two. This is 616. I forget.
I think so too, yeah.
Yeah, so shockingly, they thought enough of it to do this twice. But wow. I always like this, and this is one I have as an Athern model. This was done as ready to roll. I love that sweeping stripe up on those SD40s.
Beautiful.
Milwaukee. KDGP40, which is an interesting one where they put the big flag on the side. And this was another one that I saw in the flesh. I saw both of these several times in the mid-70s in the St. Louis area. These are Mopac, I think, Jeep 18 rebuilt units, 1776 and 1976. And I will just say it now because I know I'm going to have this in my inbox later tonight or tomorrow. Hey, you got to ask Athern to make a low-nose Jeep 18 in Mopac with the Alco trucks, and I get that every time. So
sure.
Let me just say it now. Your Genesis Jeep 18, we need that done in Bicentennial and regular Mopac with the extra exhaust stacks and the Alco trucks. And I know I've talked to a couple of the guys there that do product stuff, and I keep getting told, well, we don't have this yet, or we need to tool that, but I know it's on the list.
Oh, neat.
This one I always wanted to see, and it is preserved. I think, is it in Roanoke?
I believe so.
There is a version of it painted, and I have it as the Athern Ready to Roll model, and this is back in the 70s when it was new. Obviously, there's a TV crew doing something for it, but man, this one I never got to see for real, but always really liked that look of how they do the blue and the flag stripes. That I always thought it was a really.
Now, Tony, do you know, was that Pelver blue they used for that?
I don't know if it is or not, now that you say that. Yeah, is that by this time, if this is done for the 70s, 1971 or 2, Norfolk and Western moved away from Pevler blue to black, and that interlocked NW becomes standard. So actually that blue would have been retired by then.
Sure.
But boy, that blue is always so subjective between Wabash to N&W. I can look at different versions of that blue, and it's like I don't know, but yeah, was there a bucket of that left around that they used to paint that? I don't know, but maybe. We mentioned Athern.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember these.
Yes, this was one of the first models, and there's a couple of versions of it. I think it first rolls out, and the blue is done in a light blue. And then Athern quickly corrects it, and there's other runs of it where the blue is more correct. But this, and the U-boats were new then. The U-boats came out in 72, that run of 4-axle and 6-axle U-boats, which I just did recently in Craftsman's Collector Consist, covered U-boats. And it's amazing. I had more guys saying, I still run my Athern U-boats. Yeah. Oh, I love those. I run them all the time. And, they are wider bodies, but because they're different enough from EMDs and other things that I had at least a couple of guys email and say, I run them all the time, and no one spots that they're wider hoods than they should be, that they kind of fit in with my other power. But that was an awesome run of U-boats that came out in the 70s, and the Bicentennial was part of it. And this is its prototype. This is a train that went around with these 2 Santa Fe cars, and that's a Frisco caboose. And at the time, I want to say, I think Santa Fe and Frisco were in some preliminary talks for merger. I don't know if Seaboard was involved or not. I don't think they were, but I'm not sure the whole story on this train. But this was kind of a display of those 3 roads that toured at the time. And this Frisco caboose, and I was not able to locate it when the Wide Vision caboose was announced, and it's about the same year as the U-boats, early 1970s, the Athern Blue Box caboose. This is what they showed, and said it would be a special limited production in the first of the caboose offerings. And I have it from an Athern ad, and again, I for some reason couldn't locate it today, but it's an interesting thing that I've shown to different Athern collectors at times that are like, wow, I didn't know that. And it's like, and no, it's never made. There's no stock number, and the rest of the road names listed in that ad are all correct things that did come out, like C&O and IC. And so it's odd. It's a rare case of an Athern announcement back in those days for a road name they did not do. But that's an interesting piece. I don't know if I have here SP. That cotton belt, I think, is a 45T-2, and it's in your ready to roll line. Wow, that and that bay. In fact, I think that bay window caboose I've bought twice over the years.
Okay.
I'll see it and think, I know I've got that tunnel motor, and then I get home and realize, okay, you already had this bay window caboose. Like, yeah, but it's so cool. That to me is always a good sign, and Shane knows this because he's been with me before. I say, I got home and that thing I picked up today, I got one. And he's like, I'm not surprised. So, yeah, it does happen.
I was going to say, I'm pretty confident that caboose is not the first time that's happened.
So that is, and I think you guys have done, or is it coming out? I can't remember on these Jeep 40s if that's something you got. This is one of the Jeep 40 P-2s that was in Bay Area commuter service, and that's an old U25 Back those were the 3SPs. But this would be an awesome model to see come out in that Genesis Jeep 40 frame.
Oh, here we go. That's neat.
This is another one that I saw for real. This was Toledo, Peoria, and Western, and this is my dad's shot. And it's interesting because I remember the day we saw this for the first time. It would have been just like a Saturday in 75 or 6 whenever they first painted it. And it's telling that when you think about how stuff is today, no one could paint up a locomotive like this. You wouldn't see it on Facebook and Instagram and a bunch of different posts. Oh, UP's painted this or what. We literally pulled into the yard in East Peoria and was like, wow, look at that. They took one of their Jeep 30s and painted it Bicentennial. And my dad shot like half a roll of Kodachrome on it.
Oh, man.
How neat the surprises of just pulling in and seeing like, oh, wow. And that was for that day to come in.
Now, you said that was in Peoria?
Yes, this was a short line that connected. They were half owned by Pennsy and Santa Fe, and then later Penn Central. And by the time of Conrail, that east end had kind of fallen apart on them. But they connected from. They never went to Toledo.
They never did. Yeah, that's true.
Peoria was their base, and they connected over like around Fort Madison with Santa Fe, and over on the Indiana side with Conrail, Penn Central, Pennsy. So they were a bridge to avoid Chicago. That those two roads would send traffic through, bypass the clogged up time in Chicago to get things across. So for a long time they had really good bridge service, but as I say, the fall apart of Penn Central and the changes with Conrail kind of cut their east side off. Santa Fe took them over in the early 80s and then took all this power away. And then they came back in the late 80s as a short line, and they're still around today.
Yes, they are.
Remember, are they part of who's the Orange?
Oh, Genesee and Wyoming. I want to say they are, because I think at one point they lasted until the Rail America thing.
They were Rail America too.
I remember seeing them out of Galesburg occasionally. So
but it's a neat road. I know that's in your neck of the woods, Jim. And if you ever get a chance to rail fan them, they do have some. Oh, they had like a Jeep 40X, and they've had some telemotors and other things that they've got some neat power. It's a fun railroad to see.
Very cool.
Even today. And here's the closest thing to UP that this 951. And if you look at it, and then you look at, we'll see the DD40 that you guys are doing later, that you can see some of the design cues here and there. And I know there is some fact-based stuff to that UP paint.
Yes.
That it was being put together, but the stars, the striping in this, because this says UP in no way at all to me, really.
Right.
So many of the Bicentennials took an existing paint scheme and just traded out colors, but this certainly is not the Armor Yellow scheme, just redressed. But that the Centennial, I think, shares a lot of this kind of look. But this was as close as UP more or less got, is that this ran, and I can't remember, was the Preamble Express, there was this, and was there a D&H U-boat? And they went around either hitting the places that would be stops on the American Freedom train.
I believe
it was
so.
kind of the dry run or test run, or almost like how you see the PTC tests for things today. You know, like they took those Rocky Mountaineer Jeep 40s from Denver to Glenwood Springs to make sure they were PTC set up to run that Rocky Mountaineer train. That this was kind of that dry run for.
It would make sense too, because I remember conversations years later, of course, when I was at the Railroad Club, that that GS4 was not going to navigate well through Vermont and New Hampshire and Massachusetts. So that's why they took the Reading T1. So that was kind of a like you said, a test, if you will.
But anyway, that's my collection of that's the stuff I brought of Bicentennial odds and ends, and I saw a couple people posting there of how neat, and they always are. They're so much fun to see, and it's hard to explain, but they're really awesome locomotives.
Oh yeah, they're depending on our age, and Shane, we've established that you're too young to take part of a lot of this, but it was a big deal. And I mean, this is long before social media, long before the internet. Back in the days when we only had 3 channels, maybe a PBS channel. And I remember seeing stuff on the news out of Boston, hey, here's the Freedom Train. It was a big deal. And, I'm fortunate enough to still have some of those brochures that you would get when you would tour the cars. for those that aren't familiar, there were cars. They were former baggage and passenger cars, and they had replicas of the Constitution or the Liberty Bell or even the the Moon Rover.
Yeah.
It was really neat, and you took a tour of this, and it was really kind of telling the history of America. And they would stay at your town for, I don't know if it was a day or how long it stayed, but it was a big deal.
It really was. And again, that it's such a different time that now you think about a lot of that stuff. It's like, well, couldn't you Google it or just show me a YouTube video of the moon, rover? But then to actually be standing there and see that then was amazing because, you didn't have that kind of access. So
yeah,
it was a different thing.
You really didn't. I mean, it was back in the days when we had to read the newspaper to see what's going on downtown, type of thing. And I realize that's a lot more foreign for a lot of our younger audience out there. But, Shane, I'm going to bring you into the conversation now, too. I mean, we were talking before the show, and you said that were you young or you weren't born yet when the BN 1991 SD60M was painted for Desert Storm?
I was still, 6 more years? 97 is when I was born. So I was still 6 years to go till I come around.
Wow. So, for you, your exposure to the Bicentennial is mainly on a historic level because obviously you weren't there. But, what's some of your thoughts? I mean, you've probably done some research on this era of railroading. I mean, what are your thoughts about all this?
I mean, it's neat to see because especially nowadays where it seems like the heritage stuff catches in some places and doesn't, to really see a lot of people go out and paint their stuff. And like Tony said, companies that had the money, companies that didn't have the money, class 1 short lines, everybody went out of their way to paint stuff and try and make it work and make it happen. And it's neat because growing up in school, I was able to tailor a lot of my history projects to railroad stuff. So I was able to research quite a bit of that stuff growing up too. And, there's a lot of really neat schemes. There's a lot of really neat stuff they come up with. And just to see that national pride at the time, it was just so high through that, like Tony said, that course of about 74 to 76, almost 77 right there. It's really something to see.
Yeah, it really is neat. And I mean, we've been fortunate too, because, through the years, we've had other paint schemes that were similar to Bicentennial paint schemes. Certainly the Olympic Torch paint scheme, that was one that was really patriotic. Desert Storm 1991. I remember I was in high school when that unit was then new, SD60M, and that was on the Burlington Northern, and many, many others. And the funny thing is too, Tony, I think you kind of talked a little bit about this. A lot of those short lines, even some steel plants painted their locomotives red, white, and blue, but it lasted for quite a while.
Forever, yes. Yeah, that would be the odd thing. It'd be like 1985, and you'd see some little short line, 70-ton or whatever, a little switcher at a grain elevator is in some faded red, white, and blue. It's like, yeah, everything that could get painted like that, critters especially. I think you do a whole book on critter Bicentennial units. Yeah.
So a couple of things that we're going to talk about going into next. We've had some great talks about 1976, the Bicentennials, and a great quick tour of some of the motive power that was popular back then. Well, certainly a lot more class 1s back then. If anybody out there is interested, there are some great books on the Bicentennial locomotives that you can look up and study up on. But recently, Athern, back in December, we announced the Santa Fe SD45-2s. We were doing another run of those. We did those in the billboard or the pinstripe paint scheme that was used before the yellow and blue war bonnet. But we also did 5704, one of the Bicentennial locomotives, because Tony, you were the one that kind of broke the secret on that, and so we wanted to work in conjunction with that. Tony, tell me a little bit about the background, because basically what happened is BNSF restored one of these Santa Fe locomotives to its original paint scheme.
It was a project that was started almost, I guess, this time last year. Wouldn't that be right, Shane? I think it was late summer.
Yeah,
more or less. Yeah, and it was done locally here in Kansas City. A number of people involved, from like BNSF, I think, Eric Goodman was involved in some of that, and then Stephen Priest, that's been involved in different things in the hobby, was really the point guy, I think, with Mid-America Car that paints locomotives here. In fact, Shane and I are always driving around past it to look at what new stuff has come out. Oh, here, and yeah, I've got the group of Shane was lucky enough to get to go to the night shoot recently for the Bicentennial at Union Station.
Beautiful.
But this started at Mid-America Car in Kansas City, and this unit, I got to see it when they were sandblasting it, and it still had like ditch lights. There were a lot of, I think it had a nose light cut into it. This wasn't just a repaint. This truly got backdated to its appearance as it would have been in the mid-70s, and is a real credit to especially Stephen Priest, who is a real Santa Fe, enthusiast, that this got done and put together so well. It's a beautiful locomotive, and they arranged for it to be displayed at Union Station in Kansas City. What was it, Shane? A couple of weeks ago, over a weekend during the Santa Fe Historical Society, I think, was having their annual meet here. And I was down in Texas, so I missed this huge event, but Shane got to go, and this was a night shoot. Shane, tell us what and how this came about.
Yeah, so the unit was out on display. BNSF brought it up for the Santa Fe convention. I want to say it was like the 8th, 9th, and 10th of last month there. And I was going to go down and shoot it, and then I kind of saw some murmurs from some of the local guys, including Eric Goodman and some of the other guys, that one of the guys was bringing out a light pack and some other stuff. They were going to wait till dark. And, as great as shots during the day are, nighttime shots just have such an effect on a photo. And some of my favorite shots of mine are all night shots. So I got lucky enough to coordinate up with a lot of the local guys, real tight knit group, real good group of guys, get down there and shoot photos of this as that sun went down. And man, I got to see it right after they rolled it out of Mid-America Car, and then to see it up there polished up again, it's amazing the work that they put into this thing. And like Tony said, if you look at the pictures of how this thing rolled in before, I mean, it looks like a completely different model. The ditch lights, the nose light, the amount of work that went into it is just incredible, and the quality of work that those guys at Mid-America Car, and like he said, Stephen Priest with the research and spearheading it and all that stuff, everybody has just done a phenomenal job putting this thing back together the way it was.
And the thing about it is, both you and Tony have mentioned that not only did they restore it, they brought it back to the way it was. I can't help but notice the classification lights, which were probably removed and welded over during the BN era. The Santa Fe era. And then, this was a BNSF locomotive, and it soldiered on that far. And I'm sure it had plenty of miles on it when it went into the shop. But it's cool how they backdated everything to the way it was when it was first built.
It was an amazing project. And Shane's pictures, Shane has done, I know he's got some shots of UP Steam that are almost the same angle here, catching the Western Auto sign there at the left. And Union Station, that's the Science City area there. But boy, those lights and stuff in the evening are just spectacular. And when we go out, I always have my old Nikon that I'm shooting pictures, but I never get too concerned because I always know, like, I'll just ask Shane to send me pictures because that way I don't have to worry about if they come out good or not. And now this one, I think you told me this. Now this is without the strobe lights on, Shane. So this is how it really looked before they kicked on the lights.
Yeah. So that's just the ambient parking lot lighting there, without the strobe packs on. And then I think there's a shot. I think I caught a little late on that one, but yeah, you could tell there's a difference, especially in the nose, how well that nose is lit. There's a good one without to show the difference between that last shot there. I think this is about the time they started packing up. But yeah, it makes such a world of difference having those light packs out there to really illuminate the entire thing. You can only do so much with parking lot lighting sometimes.
Sure. No, absolutely stunning. And it's so neat to see something like this from the past, get restored. So, I mean, everything about it, the placard, Tony, that you were talking about, that that was one of the first things that probably degraded on these locomotives, the presidential seal, even the builder's plate, everything on this is like it was. It's even got the ACI panel on it. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sight. It's unbelievable. And it went west, I think, was it this week, Shane, or last week? I saw pictures of it. Guys caught it like in Texas. But I remember seeing somebody saying, what's that last unit in that set? Because it was like 3 or 4 BNSF units and then that. And I actually talked to Stephen Priest earlier this week, and I mentioned that. And I said, can you imagine being trackside, somehow not knowing about this, and then this goes flying by? I think the shot was in like Amarillo or something. Literally, that would be like you'd have to pick me back up off the ground. Like, wow, what happened? Yeah.
Yeah. No, we've got some pictures we'll share later from our friends at Athern. They were nice enough to share on our social media, and we'll give them some time in a little bit. But yeah, can you imagine rail fanning and
and just coming across that? Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is in the current diesel era. I wanted to share this too because Shane got to see it when it first hit, and this is his feature in diesel era. So if you want some real close-up shots, this is on the newsstand now. You can buy this at shop.whiteriverproductions.com. But these are some shots he did. There's one I put in of back in the day. You can tell by that little Chevy Love pickup truck.
Oh yeah,
down the foreground. That's a real shot from back in the day. This is the group that was involved as on this one doors. There's BNSF and the paint, Mid-America Car, the guys that worked on it. That's probably the only thing that's not, what it really was. And I picked this up, the ACI on the top right, is the car tracking thing. And then that Transcorp badge thing that's bolted in, I think it's the, what's that RFI, it's the current, tracker stuff. So that would not have been on the locomotive at the time, but probably something you have to have, I would assume, to be able to move it and do things today. But this is in our the current edition of Diesel Era, and these are all shots. And you can see by the snow on the ground. What was this, Shane? Was this February, I think?
It was either late February or early March. I remember it was cold. I had to go back to the car and sit in there and warm up a little bit. I couldn't feel my fingers, but
I see. March. It says March 11th. This was a Friday afternoon.
Okay.
You told me, yeah. And I think what we caught, it's coupled to an SD40-2 that we shot the heck out of like a week or two later, and it was sunny and about 70 degrees. I remember I sent those pictures to Janik of that newly painted BNSF SD40-2 for possible Athern stuff later. But boy, it's just awesome, and Shane has covered it a number of times, so we were very fortunate to be here in Kansas City and have access to it.
Yeah, no, it's a great setup, and like Tony said, if you want to see more of Shane's work, that issue of Diesel Era is on the newsstands now, or of course you have subscription as well, don't you, Tony?
They do send me one. Yeah, I get a complimentary subscription.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I was saying earlier, we had some Athern fans post some pictures of theirs, and you were talking about rail fanning earlier. This one here, this is from Dave Campbell. I can't remember where he caught this. If he's on the show, maybe he'll post, but he got some really good shots of it actually en route to California. I think I got another one from his. There's a cool shot. And like you said, Tony, I mean, I can only imagine. I just got back from Galesburg rail fanning, and you see SD70 Aces and an old locomotive like maybe a -9 or an AC4400 now. Can you imagine in a sea of wide cabs and premium heritage paint, you see this and you'd be like, what?
I mean, look at those JB Hunt containers behind it. It's like, what?
Right. Yeah. You're for the old guys in the room, we should be seeing per diem boxcars behind that.
Yes, yeah, rail boxes.
JB Hunts. Yeah, exactly. Let's see. This is cool. This is Terry Lovell sent these in, and he was down there. And I forgot you guys had that really cool old Western Auto sign in the background. That's really cool. But he brought his last release, I believe, of the Athern locomotive. And got some really cool pictures of it downtown. It's one really neat picture. I think, if I remember right, I think Terry told me that that's going to end up in RMC, which is a sister magazine to you guys.
Yes, yeah.
So really cool. Now, briefly, if you're wondering what we're all talking about, the real 5704 was restored. It's going to, which museum is it, Tony? The name escapes me. It's in California.
It's going to California, and yeah, I don't know why I just blanked on that too. It's going to, and I thought I had that down someplace. I kicked myself here on this. And it is operational though, which initially I was told it was not. It was going to be a cosmetic, but I think I have been told that it is working. And yes, I'll have to look for that. I don't know why I don't have that, but I remember thinking that I want to make sure I had it to be able to share. But it's going to a museum in California.
Southern California Rail Museum. Okay, thank you, Donald, for getting that to us. I'll put that on the screen to give him some credit.
Yep, and I know Mr. Wells. Yep.
Awesome. I want to say that one of the guys with that Southern California Rail Museum, if I remember the story correctly, somebody was telling me one of the guys with the museum is actually an ex-Santa Fe maintenance employee from that era.
Oh, okay.
When they had it in Mid-America Car, he flew out or drove out to take a look at it mechanically to start to determine what they needed to do to put that thing back together too.
Wow.
Okay.
So I think they anticipate having it running very quickly.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
No, that's great. I mean, when we heard of this news, when Tony contacted Athern, he contacted me one afternoon. I got on the phone with our product development, and they said, you know what, we're actually going to be doing the SD45. Let's go ahead and do 5704. And so we offered that. That was a release back in December of 2021. You had until the end of the month to pre-order those. That being said, pre-orders on that are closed. They'll be here later in the year in the wintertime. But if you missed out on that for any reason, there's plenty of hobby shops and online dealers, for that matter, that did order a little extra of those. So you might want to get on the phone now with your preferred dealer and see if you can still grab one of these. These are going to be Genesis, so they're going to have all those neat lighting features. And I got mine. Mine's from the last release. The newer one will be a little bit different, but that is definitely got a lot of people talking in the rail fan and the model railroad community.
Oh, it's easily. I think that's got to. Don't you think, Shane, is the biggest locomotive of the year? I can't see anything.
Oh, absolutely.
Done that'll top that this year. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be fun to see too, because what most people would probably think, oh, that's somebody running it on their in-track layout. You'd never see that in real life. And like you said, to see that trackside in a mix of Gevos or really something.
Well, it just goes to prove there's a prototype for everything.
Exactly.
It really is. Well, speaking of prototype for everything, if you missed out for whatever reason on the 5704, try to call one of your dealers and see if you can get one of those. But if you like Bicentennial locomotives and you like big locomotives, and you remember Tony had said earlier in the show, UP didn't really have a Bicentennial locomotive, and we've been doing the legendary liveries for about a couple of years now. And I know with a lot of folks it's very polarizing and they don't care for it because it's not prototypically accurate. But one thing that I always try to tell everyone that watches Train Tuesday or watches our social media feed, when our researchers are doing research on actual prototype locomotives, once in a while they will find something where a railroad was going to order a specific locomotive and have it painted a certain way. And for whatever reason, whether it be a business committee meeting or the railroad was bought out by another railroad, what have you, they never came to be. And that's the case with the Union Pacific DDA 40X. Now, while our researchers were working on this specific locomotive for this next release, we just happened to find out that this almost happened. The Union Pacific DDA 40X. Basically, what happened was Chester Mack, who was one of their artist guys over there at the UP, had drawn up a actual Bicentennial paint scheme for one of their DDA 40Xs, and it came to a vote. And from what we've been told and what from our researchers have found out is that that committee voted no by one vote. So imagine if that person that voted no, if maybe they had gone to the cafeteria sooner, gotten a coffee and a donut, maybe been in a better mood, they could have said, hey, you know what? Yes, and we wouldn't be talking about a legendary liveries. We'd be talking about an actual locomotive. But strike of the pen, I guess you could say, right, Tony?
Man, if I'd have been in that meeting with someone saying, let's paint a DD40X into Bicentennial colors, there's no way it wouldn't have gone through unanimously.
Oh yeah, I mean totally. It's now let me bring this for you. Anybody that's watching the show that's not familiar with what Tony and Shane and I are talking about, here it is. And this is, the Union Pacific caboose that is not real. That was something that our guys created to go with the locomotive because we're offering it as a box set, as a collectible box set. But the locomotive itself, this is based on the Chester Mack artwork that our guys discovered. Now, another thing too, a lot of guys out there who are not fans of the legendary liveries, they think we're just making this stuff up. We actually worked with UP on this. UP gave us the blessing. When we found out about this, we said, hey, guys, we work with UP every day with our other locomotives and rolling stock. And they said, yeah, you know what? Go ahead. And so they allowed us to do this. And this is one of those, it could have happened type of things. I mean, what do you think, Tony? Can you imagine?
That to me is my favorite kind. I mean, yes, I like all the non-prototypical paint jobs. The legendary liveries are awesome. But anytime there's like a fact-based, like they were going to order these or this is what they had planned to paint them, but something changed, that makes them so cool because of the fact that it almost was. And yeah, right. I didn't know. You had teased this again, I think the last time we were together with Ken Bianco from Train World, right. You said, get ready for July, think Bicentennial and think big. And it hit me. I thought, because we were talking, I think, that night about the U50s that were recently announced.
That's right.
And that went through my head of, wow, I wonder if they do a red, white, and blue UP Centennial. And it's like, maybe not. And then when this rolled out, it was like, wow, they are. That is so. And now, wait a minute. The thing I've missed here, you said this is going to be because I obviously already have the locomotive on order. I don't think I've got the caboose on order yet. But wait, this will be a special box set.
Yeah, we're going to offer a special box set, and it's going to include this caboose here. Now, the caboose is the Genesis. This is a CA10. So it's a UP prototype. Now, keep in mind, this never was even a concept. This is pure legendary livery, but it's mimicking the paint scheme of the DDA 40X. It has that Chester Mack feel to the artwork. And we're going to offer this with the DDA 40X as a box set, special box set. Now, the caboose will have DCC and DCC and lighting. It will not have sound. The other CA10s that we're offering will have sound, but the one in the box set is strictly DCC and lighting. But it's going to make a really impressive set, to kind of have a matching set with the caboose and the locomotive.
Oh, very much so. As Shane can tell you, the box very often drags me into getting my credit card out. So, yeah.
Well, I'm going to warn you, Tony. You're going to feel nostalgic. And I'm gonna let the cat out of the bag just a little bit. I've seen samples of the box art for this, and I was pleased to see that our artist at Athern, very gifted man, he's got a gifted crew, and he tapped right into nostalgia. We're living in that era right now where nostalgia is big, and it reminded me so much of the 70s. The Bicentennial star that we used to see everywhere. He's really, really gone all out on this. So I'm looking forward to this. And I think the box is going to sell you.
Oh, box gets me half the time. I tell you, there's a lot of things. Yeah. I don't even ever open the box. That's, I don't open it, but wow, that's awesome. I got to have it. So, yeah, maybe I might need 2 of these if the box is really that good.
Now I'm going to ask Shane, but I know the first thing that's going to come out of Shane's mouth is we needed an end scale. Am I right, Shane?
I mean, either that or baking instructions, one of the two. However you get it down, I don't know the science behind it, but
John jokingly says we have the shrink ray to get it into end scale. I'm not sure if the shrink ray is gets everything proportional or not, but there's one of those things. If we say it all the time on our social media and we say it on these live feeds, if we get enough requests, we will do it. And Shane, I'm sure you've probably pre-ordered the new Athern Genesis 13K tank cars. I was really excited about those. I mean, cut levers, air hoses, the whole 9 yards. That was based on what we got for feedback from our customers, our fans. And anytime you see something that you would like done in your scale or your road or anything like that, you can go to Athern.com to the contact us page, and our Athern product suggestions at Athern.com. That's an email. Goes right to product development. You won't get an answer because we're collating all of that information. And, that's how those 13K tank cars and N scale came about, was because we got a lot of requests for it. So I guess, Shane, I should probably warn the guys, if we get an email over and over again from the same location, we'll know who it is.
I mean, between that and then bugging you guys at shows, that's the best way to get a hold of it,
That's right.
But, yeah, that is the best way to get stuff pushed through, is sit there and bug you guys, because at some point you got to do it.
And, the other thing, too, and I've said this time and time again, and I think Shane and Tony can verify this, 90% of us on Athern are model railroaders. And, most of the time when you guys, or anybody for that matter, comes up to us at a show and says, hey, you really ought to do such and such, we're interested. We really are. Our biggest problem that we have is time, because, we're like any manufacturer. We wish we could just be like Barbara Eden and blink that thing into existence, but there's a lot of work to do. And, something like this, like the 13K tank cars, many hours of research went into that. And like the AC 4400s, that's been a project that's been going on for a number of years. But by all means, stop by when you see us at a show. Talk to us, because we love this as much as you guys do.
And share that information too, right, Jim? I mean, I run into a similar thing with HO Collector, where someone says, I wish you would do a story on this. And it's like, well, I think I have one that's broken and not in its box. So it's like, yeah, I agree. That would be a great thing. I'll start looking on eBay and at swap meets, and I'll get some, and we'll do the. So again, same thing. You need pictures. You need that supporting information. So if you're interested in something and you have access to those things, remember to include that with your, gee, I wish they would make, and then share any information you have, because that really goes into it. A lot of times it is, oh, I'd love to do that, but I don't, like I say with HO Collector, I don't have one of those. Or next time I see one of those come up, yeah, it's on my list. I'd like to have one. So that would be a fun story. But you don't always have it just ready to go. And it's the same with prototype information, that you've got all these guys out there looking. So if somebody has it, share it, because you never know. That could be the piece that was needed to get. I don't know how many times I get emails from some of your guys with, have you got back shots of this? Or I had somebody the other day wanting bottoms of trucks or sides. And it's like, I kind of remember that. Let me look. So yeah, you never know what odd piece is. Has anybody got a down on cab shot because we're trying to decide what this was or where that was on the unit?
Yeah, it's, the other thing we talked earlier about, back in the 70s, we didn't have internet. We didn't have, all these channels and communications. Heck, I mean, we didn't even have a cell phone, let alone a smartphone. And nowadays, we are really fortunate to live in an age of information. And the nice thing is, we can reach out to our fans and say, hey, you know what? Ferromex has got a new paint scheme, and we're wanting to do a locomotive in that paint scheme. And so we sent out a post last week asking for folks for information. And our developers were overwhelmed with information, but that's a good thing, because in the end, that makes you realize that you're going to have an authentic model based on the actual prototype, and in this case on a new paint scheme. So it's just great to have that interaction online like that.
Well, and our ability now too to shoot, and I know Shane does this, so do I. We'll go out shooting for the day, and I can talk to him later that night going, well, I'm going through my stuff and I shot like 250 pictures today. And he'll say, oh, and he usually will beat me. Yeah, I shot like 400. And again, it's I've asked guys that used to shoot back in the day, hey, you know, how come nobody shot pictures of cabooses or freight cars or this?
Sure.
And they'll say, well, you had 24, 36 exposure. You had to buy the roll of film, send it off, and pay to have it developed. So everybody shot the locomotives and moved on because you didn't want to waste that shot or frame. And now it's, you know, nothing to stop and shoot 30, 40 shots of, again, I think I was over in Atchison, Kansas recently, and there was a rebuilt, it was a Jeep 40 or SD40-2 that it luckily was right under the bridge, so I could get up and get shots down off the bridge. I got both sides of the unit, front, back, and I think I sent all that stuff to Janik or one of the guys there at Athern saying, wow, this was just amazing that it was middle of the day, the sun was right, and I literally got every square inch of this newly painted, rebuilt like SD40-2. They're like, awesome, we'll throw that in the file. But again, when I think about it, I probably shot like, you know, 50, 60 pictures, getting trucks and up close on the pilots and the hoses, which again, a 36 roll of Kodachrome, it's like, well, no, I'm not going to blow a whole roll of Kodachrome shooting hoses. Right. But, you know, now you can.
Oh, that's so true. That's so true. I mean, you, like you're saying, you can tell the younger rail fans because you and I came from the era of Kodachrome, and you know, and remember, I'm sure both of us remember Photomat too. I'm sure there's a lot of young rail fans out there who don't remember Photomat. But you know, with digital, you have that ability. You can, the only thing you're burning is time. And you know, I did the same thing at Galesburg. There was a locomotive on display for Downtown Railroad Days, and I had a fellow end tracker with me, and he's like, are you seriously taking pictures of the speed recorder? And I'm like, well, yeah, because I can send this to John and Janik, and you know, maybe they can do something with it. And in the old days, we would never do that. We'd never do that.
Yeah. And now I don't think twice. It's just like bang, 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 just keep taking pictures, catching all those details. Because again, that's the question is, well, we don't know what it had for this or that. So it's like, well, we're covering it now.
I tell guys that all the time, you know. The one thing I always preach, and I tell Tony the same thing every time we go out, pixels are cheap. Shoot the shots because pixels are cheap. You know, I'll come home with, like he said, I'll come home with 300, 400, 500 photos of track, structures, cars, neat weathering effects, engines, detail shots, you know, and sometimes it pays to hit that parking garage or hit that bridge and get those top-down shots for the sake of loads, rooftop detail, because you know, you can come through and I've got folders on hard drives of just weathering stuff, detail part stuff, engine stuff. I mean, all of that. And part of that is working with the magazine. It's nice to be able to go back and be like, well, do we have one of these tank cars? And to go through the folder and see if I've got a photo of it. But, you know, like Tony said, you're not regulated at 24 or 36 shots. You go out there and shoot 1,000 shots in a day. And maybe you burnt a couple dollars in gas, really, but that's it.
Yeah.
And even if you don't have a good camera, everybody's got one of these in their pockets.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it's surprising how well there's, at times I get even model shots that guys will send me that, or I can run them in the magazine because the smartphones do it well enough. So, yeah, and there's never an excuse not to get stuff recorded today.
Frederick wants to know, when will the 5704 be released? Well, Frederick, we announced those back in December 2021. We should be seeing them winter of 2022, maybe 2023, early 2023. So if you pre-ordered one, that's when you'll probably get a phone call from your dealer. If you didn't, you still have time. Maybe you can find somebody that ordered a little bit extra, and you can put it in order with them. Shane, I wanted to talk with you real quick, just for the guys. This is the first time with us on the Athern Extra. Tell us a little bit about your background, because you are a prolific end scaler. You've had many of your things published, and you have a YouTube channel. Tell us a little bit about your modeling career.
So I started, would have been right about beginning of high school, 10, 11 years back now, when I really started getting serious about it. Joined one of the local in-track clubs. And at the time, the YouTube stuff was kind of catching on. I know Derek and some of those guys that were like really starting to get their starts from way back when. But there wasn't a whole lot out there. So I started my own channel doing mostly installs. I would do installs for people, then I would shoot a video of it, send it to them. That way I can make sure it's the way they liked it before we did all the shipping portion of it. Then it kind of evolved into doing some how-to stuff. We did some layout videos. I've got a handful of layout tours, including Don Ball's Stockton and Copperopolis. There's a really good layout tour on the channel there. From there, just kind of spent a couple of years working on stuff, getting better at weathering and whatnot. And then I'm pretty confident that's how Tony met me. I remember getting an email one day, and this would have been 2017 maybe, a couple of years after I graduated. I get an email from Tony who said, "Hey, just found your YouTube channel, was looking through videos, saw you were local, would love for you to do I think it was a small write-up in one of the beginnings of MRN about being a younger guy in the hobby." And I thought, that is like the peak of my modeling career. Like, it doesn't get any cooler than this. So did that for him, got it published, thought doesn't get any cooler. And then he come back and said, "Hey, you're actually decent writing," which is funny because I was not a fan of any kind of communication art stuff in school, didn't care for writing. So he comes back to me and he's like, "Hey, we'd really like to have you work with a magazine." And since then, it's been a lot of, I would say, working on my own layout, but this is 4-ish years in the running, and it's getting there. But, it's a lot of magazine work, a lot of bits and stuff. I don't do as much install stuff anymore, but just bits and pieces from here and there.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. Donald wants to know, what is your channel name?
Breakman 17, all spelled together.
Okay.
I think if it's the Breakman or Breakman 17, but I know Breakman 17 will at least get you there. And I haven't put up anything. Oh, shoot. I probably haven't put anything up in the better part of a year and a half or 2 years, which if anybody goes back and watches, like my very last video I put up was when I was still drawing the layout. And I said, I'm going to do one update a month to keep myself accountable. And I haven't done anything in like 2 years. So
I keep him awfully busy, though. In fact, he's usually always got a couple of boxes full of models that he needs to shoot and get back to me and off to reviewers. Shane does 90% of the photography in Model Railroad News. When you see all those great pictures, as the stuff comes in, we decide what reviewer we're going to send it off to. I do like the scale, speed, and pull test stuff here. It goes to Shane. He does photography work. We're always handing back and forth boxes of models going in different directions. And that is a tremendous help to me. And that's one thing I hear the most on Model Railroad News is how much readers enjoy the pictures, you know, the close-ups we do of different things. And Shane's got a great eye for that, picking those things out, you know, showing them off. I'll see things as I go through those pictures and go, "Oh, wow, I didn't even realize it had that or this or that. That's awesome." So now he does amazing stuff. And yeah, I think Breakman 17, I think between that and, of course, the podcast, A Modeler's Life, Shane was on it back in the day. One of those two, I remember being a guest with Shane, but I can't remember if I think I might have already met you. I went looking for an answer to something on a decoder install late one evening. Like I was close to deadline. I was trying to decide, can it do this or that with this decoder? And in searching, I find one of his videos. And again, this is like 6-7 years ago. So Shane's like, you know, in high school or just out. Here's this kid going through this whole thing of, yeah, this will do this. And if you change this setting, it's that. And I'm like, and I'm sitting here trying to write it down as quick, like pausing the thing, like, wait, what did you say? It's a what pin decoder? Because I want to get that in there too. And then I see he mentioned something like, well, my grandpa and I are in that one group?
Heartland N-Track Club.
Heartland N-Track. Okay. So suddenly there's this mention of stuff Kansas City that I recognize. And I'm like, wait, is this kid like in the Kansas City area? And I'm about an hour north of Kansas City. And so I message him saying, hey, you know, find out that here he knows all this stuff on electronics. Then I find out he's a good photographer. He did that guest editorial. I still remember the guest editorial because when our publisher, Kevin Udaly, saw it, I think the picture we included, Shane, is you with your grandpa.
Yeah, it was, would have been I think second to last time the Challenger come through Kansas City, there's a photo of my grandfather and I, and I've got my little Thomas the Tank Engine t-shirt on, standing out in front of the Challenger.
And he's not the Shane you know here in his mid-20s. It's this little bitty kid with the Thomas shirt on. And I'd sent that to Kevin saying this guy did this guest editorial, and I still remember Kevin Udaly, our publisher's response was, "Oh, that's really neat. Look, he took his kidder's grandson to see that." And I'm like, no, that's the guy that wrote it. That's his grandfather. Oh, Like, wow. I said,
Wow.
yeah, this kid is just amazing. So
Now you guys, and correct me if I'm wrong, I can't remember if you shot the photography or if Shane did, but you just did recently did a review. It's been published on the Athern Genesis Vermont Rail SD70M-2. Was that you or Shane that did the pictures?
I think Shane did all those.
And they came out, of course, I'm a little biased with the New England Railroad on there. And actually, this brings up a good question somebody had in the live feed here. I kind of know the answer, but I'm going to pose it to you guys. Let's see if I can find it. It says, Tony or Shane, do you get to keep the trains or do you have to send them back? And it's both, it really, isn't it, guys?
It's an odd combination. There's things I buy because I want them or I want to review them, and they end up, there are samples that companies do give us. I give the samples to the reviewers. When you see the guys like Ryan Crawford or Justin Sobek or like Shane, when they do reviews, that's part of how Model Railroad News works, is you get to keep the model for reviewing it. So it's all over the place, but in general, yeah, the samples are provided by the manufacturer most of the time, or we get some selection of, maybe there's a road name or something else I want to include. So we might like get this or that, and then I'll buy this or that because I want it. Shane does the same thing. I'm trying to think, we just had something recently that, again, it's a mix of things, but yeah, some of the products are presented to us for review use, and then they're given to the reviewers. But yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Like that, I think that Vermont we sent back to you, Jim, right?
You did, yeah. That was
we didn't.
With the print deadlines, it's a little bit different. So we get production samples before they actually come into stock, and that works out good for the magazine if we can get that to you, sooner. So that way, if somebody's reading the article, the review, they're like, hey, I really like that. I didn't pre-order it. They can go to one of the larger online retailers and perhaps pick that locomotive up. So yeah, that did come back, and we appreciate the coverage on that. And it worked out really well for both the magazine and Athern.
I can't remember who it was. I know the guy, he's got some electronic stuff he does, but I think when that issue came out, he said he loved seeing the Vermont whatever and went out and picked one up.
Oh, very cool.
So it is, and a lot of times on those things, if I get to see something in advance like that, it is because that may be the only one physically here stateside, because they'll fly over an early sample from China. And so again, occasionally we get access to that, but again, we don't keep them because they're heading back to you guys, because then you need them for your own photography work and such.
Yeah, and to let you guys know out there that don't know, that the industry is both the manufacturing end and the publishing end. It's like Tony said, it's different. There are many times we all purchase our own things. I've even purchased Athern stuff that I can't get at work anymore from one of our vendors. And Tony, I know there's been times it's been frustrating for both of us where there's something that we may have missed and you want to get it, and by the time I try to order it, it's long gone. So fortunately, we've got a long list of online and local hobby shops that we can draw from. And, thank goodness for these hobby shops, because I think all three of us here would be sunk without them.
Well, and like Shane and I we haven't gone out a lot in the last couple of months. Shane's been busy getting married and running off to honeymoon in Mexico, whatever. But so he's not been on the job as much as he usually is. But we actually have a light box set up at Midwest Model Railroad in Independence. And there's times we go in there and we'll go through samples and, products and stuff there that we didn't either missed, or, hey, I didn't see this had come out, and we'll do photography work. So it's incredible how all this stuff gets to us. Yeah.
That's great. And you just reminded me, Shane, you are no longer a single man. So for the ladies out there, he's taken. He's got the ring. Congratulations, first of all. This just happened in June. You got married in June. And I heard that Mr. Bond showed up in a helicopter to pick you up. Is that true?
Maybe a little bit. No, it was finally nice to get around to getting to COVID kind of put a hampering on a little bit of that, but it was fun. We actually celebrated 10 years of dating on the 17th, and they got married on the 18th. So 10 years in a day to start that adventure. But yeah, one of the guys my dad flew with in the Army has a small helicopter and called me a week before. He's like, hey, you want to be flown to the wedding? And I'm like, I don't know why that's a question. Absolutely.
Yeah, very cool.
You should have seen this, Jim. It was a Saturday afternoon. It's out in the country at one of these neat, like, event venues. It was a big barn, and they had us all like on the west side of it with, the sun wasn't close to setting, but nice afternoon sun. Everybody's there. It's about 5 o'clock. We're waiting for the ceremony to start. And it's like, I don't think I've seen Shane or anybody yet. I guess they're all going to come out here in a minute. And then I see this helicopter like off on the horizon, and it's getting closer, and I'm like, oh, really? Right at the time of the wedding. Who's this nut in this helicopter that's going to ruin the ceremony? And then it comes swooping down and lands, and I'm like, and everybody's kind of like, you could hear the murmuring in the crowd, like, what's going on? And I'm looking, I'm thinking, boy, that kind of looks like Shane's in the front seat, but that can't be possible. And then he bails out with the minister, and they both come up to the little altar area. I'm like, yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, the only thing missing was the music for that, but that's pretty cool. Way to make an entrance.
That's incredible. Yeah.
Now, Shane, your newlywed wife, what does she think about it's not just a hobby anymore, it's a career for you. How does she feel about it?
She doesn't love trains by any means. It's not her first pick of activities. No, she's been extremely supportive. I would have picked up this hobby right about the time we started dating. We're pretty close. And I told her, I said, this is what I do. This is, at that time, is what I did to relax and unwind. And then being picked up with the magazines and working with Tony and whatnot, it really has become a side job. But she's been super supportive. She's been great about going out and watching trains. She actually went with me in March there to go see the Bicentennial unit when they rolled it out of Mid-America Car.
Oh, very nice.
So she sat in the car in the heater and played on her phone while I was out there shooting pictures, freezing my fingers off. But no, she's been great. I couldn't ask for a better sidekick. She's been super supportive of whether it's buying train stuff, or she's gone to a couple of train shows and then decided that's not really her scene. But no, she's been really good to me.
That's good to hear. I mean, I've been with my wife for a number of years, and then we finally got married this past June, or rather May. And, Tony, to be honest with you, Angela loves model railroading because I'm at home working on stuff. I'm not, doing something outside. If it's a car show, she's usually with me, but she rather likes it because she knows where I'm at. And the great thing about model railroading is you can work on it a little bit at a time. And if, a household project needs to get attended to or something of that nature, you can stop, you can go do that, and then you come back to it. It's not like you leave for the day to go fishing or hunting or bowling or anything like that. So it's an activity that she really enjoys because she knows where I'm at, and she never complains about how much I buy. So that's even better.
And see, that's always what I tell Shane on any of that stuff. If I'm getting stuff, he's like, oh, Brooke's going to be thrilled. I'll say, tell her it's work, that this is work related. And so, so we got that, covered. Yeah.
Speaking of that, she must be watching. So there you go. There's the approval of my wife. Yeah, she's been very patient, especially since this is a career for me. And that's great, Shane. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And Tony, you've got somebody too, but he's got his own persona. I think he's even got his own Facebook page now. That's Bandit.
He should have one. Yeah, my
Bandit is just your rail fan companion, isn't he?
He goes out with me most of the time. We were out rail fanning on the UP Falls City sub last weekend, and yeah, he's my buddy going out. And my friend Pamela down in Texas keeps saying that Bandit's enough of a character. He needs his own Instagram or Facebook page.
He has definitely got a persona. I've got a question here from Train Fan talking to us. And this is a good time, folks. We're kind of winding down on the show. If you've got any questions for myself or our special guests, Shane and Tony, go ahead and throw them in the comments. I'll be looking for them. We'll throw them up there and we'll answer those questions. Train Fan 1995 says, hey, Jim, how about some Amtrak Talgo cars or a BNSF-9 with no lettering? I don't know if it's H1 or H2. And I'm going to have to go back into my memory because that was over 20 years ago, Tony. Remember that? When they were starved for power, that they were just painting them? And I don't think they were heritage anything. They didn't even have pinstripes.
No, I don't think so. When Shane, weren't there NS units that were just gray with the black.
Yeah, they had integrated units. I want to say it's H1 because I just saw a slide of those on eBay the other day because I buy slides to reshoot them later because I neat stuff you can do in Photoshop. But I want to say they're H1s because I just seen a slide on eBay the other day of those because I think I sent them to Tony and said, hey, look, it's the closest thing you'll ever get to Milwaukee GE units.
Yeah.
Yeah. I vaguely remember seeing those in the Chillicothe sub coming out of Galesburg, and they were just so power starved because they were so, this was probably 98, 99, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And they were coming right from Erie with just paint, no wording, lettering, nothing. In fact, I remember I've got one somewhere. I can't remember the number, but it was literally spray painted on the cab. It's road number. That's how quick it went through. So that's an excellent suggestion.
Those would make good,
and definitely put that into our product suggestion email because we've been doing some Dash 9s lately.
Those he mentioned those Amtrak Talgo cars, and I think those ran in the Pacific Northwest, and those are those odd. There were HO models of those. They were done by ER model importers that's not around anymore, and I forget who did them. The new HO collector, I happened to cover some ER models. I just was in the area of that. So if you pick up the new HO collector that's landing in the next couple weeks, you'll see coverage on those. But they're odd pieces. And from talking to the person involved with that, I think some of the tooling is no longer all available, as some of that kind of gets between moving from manufacturers and such, things can get damaged, or all you got to do is lose one slide piece of the mold and you can't make it anymore. So they're an interesting piece, but they did at one time exist, but it would be an odd thing to see done. Yeah,
definitely. I'm getting a few requests, and before I put your questions or requests up on the screen, I just want to remind everybody, if there's something that you want to see Athern do, go to our Athern product suggestions at athern.com. That's the email address that you need to send those suggestions in. And I'll be honest with you, and I'm sure Tony and Shane can understand, when we come out with the next round of Dash 9s or AC 4400s, we want to do what our customers want. So if it's a CSX run or a UP run, whether you want red sill, yellow sill, UP, we need to know that because we want to make sure that we're getting the models that you guys want. So by all means, use that product suggestion email. It's really helped us in the past, and I think it's really helping you guys out there as modelers. With that being said, Tony, if Athern made you king for a day, what would you want to see Athern produce?
Well, I don't know, because there's so much stuff that has been done. I think the one piece I still feel is missing out of the Genesis stuff, you've done the fantastic UP Steam. A lot of the major diesel stuff, has been done, the Centennial and whatnot. I still would like to see the DD35A with the cab, or the DD35 with the cab and the B unit set. I'd love to see those added to the big UP power. That'd be awesome. But
that's a good suggestion. Shane, how about you? What would you like to see Athern do?
The scary part about it, there's so many holes in N-scale that still exist.
Sure.
If I had to pick one thing out of my list, and I know Tony and I had just talked about this the other day, UP E units, the executive E units done right and proper. Because I know they've had a couple of close maybes in N-scale, but nobody's ever done them right and proper. And I've talked to a bunch of guys about that we'd all say, I think they got 2 A's and a B. If it come in a box set, I'd buy it absolutely in a heartbeat.
That'd be nice. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
I've got that in a letter. Someone asked about road specific E units, saying that there are E units, but to get, again, because these contemporary UP ones are not the same thing that was running in the 50s, 60s.
Right.
So, real detailed, specific E's. And I think that person asked for everything from the early E3, E5, E6, all the way through E9. So, I don't know.
Yeah, definitely.
That would be.
No, I mean that's
one on the list, though.
Oh, sure. Yeah, definitely. And I can definitely I can get in on that. That would definitely be cool. Anthony is very persistent. He's got a suggestion, so I'm going to put it up here. Why don't you guys do the Winchester and Western GP10? That would be cool. Anthony, you need to do what you did here on the live and send that to our Athern product suggestion email, because that would work out really well. Derek's got an interesting suggestion too. Didn't think of this. Norfolk Southern Business Train F units done properly. Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I know other companies have done that, but I don't know how.
I think there always
accurate it was.
Yeah, I think there have been generics, because don't they have like ditch lights cut in the nose?
Yeah, they're actually in the nose.
So I don't think there's never been, not even, I don't think Overland ever did brass. I don't think there's anything like that.
That's a good suggestion. I had one other picture to share with you guys tonight. Now, I know we've been mainly focusing on the United States Bicentennial, but I technically said the show was red, white, and blue. And I got this through Instagram this morning. I had to share it. I told them I'd share it. Check this out. Now, this is, I'm going to try to pronounce this without butchering it too much. It looks like it's pronounced Coquitlam Railfan 2022. But really nice picture of his new Dash 9 4642. But look in the background.
There it is. Yeah, wow.
A whole lot of red, white, and blue there too. So I always liked that BC rail paint scheme. That was a
I did too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Neat road.
Guys, what are you working on in the shop? I know, Tony, you've always got something going on. You're mainly working on the magazine or looking at the collecting stuff. What do you got going on right now?
What have I been working on? Because there was something I was working on. Shane and I have both been playing around with some larger scale steam, or he will be soon, but that's a side thing. I'm trying to think now what I've been working on. I've been mostly getting Model Railroad News together for its September edition already, which seems amazing.
Wow.
And working on, I'm setting up a backup computer, so I've got that if I have things. So I've kind of been knee deep with that this week. So.
Okay. Shane, what about you? It looks like you've got a start to a really nice layout behind you.
Yeah, I'd like to tell you I'm working on the layout, but this is kind of an in phases thing. Like maybe for a couple of days we work on it, a couple of weeks we take off. It's very much like road work. We work on it a little bit, and we take some time off to go think about it. And we work on it a little bit. No, I got a lot of photography stuff in the magazine right now. I've actually got a box here from Tony. I need to get shot and then get up to him, and I'm sure I've got a box up there to exchange. Besides that, really just kind of plinking away at this. I was hoping to have the switching layout done by February of last year, so we're right on track for that, but really starting to make the final push on scenery, and I'm hoping to have videos of running trains within a month or two.
Tell us a little bit about your layout. I know it's going to be N scale, but tell us the size, the scope, and the era, and what you're modeling.
So it's a 8-foot by 4'6", four 4-foot sections. Loosely based off of Fairfax, which is kind of the northwest corner of downtown Kansas City. It's the old mop yards, now UP now, about 2015 or so, just so I can kind of smudge down Tier 4 stuff, but smudge up some of the older yard stuff, some of the, like the MP15s that were just starting to be phased out. But it's pretty late, loosely based off of Fairfax in terms of the feel, the look of the layout. It's a 1 foot wide switching layout. Trying to remember off the top of my head. I think it does 30 some odd cars if you exchange everything one for one. All DCC. I've got a set of the proto throttles that run great with the Tsunami and ESU sound decoders. Just trying to get all the little bits and pieces really tied in now. The final wiring, trying to source some other little bits and pieces. But when we moved into the apartment, I finally wanted somewhere I could run and play trains. And I think everybody kind of falls into, well, I got the bench work done, and then it became a shelf for stuff for about 6 months. And then I had to clear all that stuff off to actually work on it. But I've always really enjoyed switching, the yard work, the going out and working with customers. It's part of the reason I really enjoy Kansas City is there's just a lot of that locals switching, interchange stuff. So it kind of grew on me. And then I had a grandfather that worked for he worked for Mopac when he was 19, all the way up to when he retired with UP in the early 2000s. So
Wow.
it was a lot of model what you see, because when I was a kid, I used to stay during the summer with my grandparents during the day, and he would take me down there to go get his checks from the yard office back when you still had to go pick up your checks. And I remember we'd sit there he was one of the maintenance guys in the shop. We'd sit there in the shop and watch trains roll by through the yard for a couple hours. So a lot of that is just modeling what I remember, and then some of the stuff around when I graduated, when I was able to actually start driving and going and chasing trains. So
Wow.
just a little bit of everything, but
it's really cool. And Shane, you bring up a really good point, actually. We've talked about this on Train Tuesday. I think we've seen, as fellow ed scalers, we've seen advancements in N scale. You know, when I first got into N scale, and Tony, you remember these days, you had 2 speeds with your locomotives. You had stopped and full speed boogie. Nowadays, we have a lot of the same things the HO scale guys have, and we're seeing more and more prototype modelers, switching layouts, you know, more of the prototype, not just, you know, a novelty like N scale was in the past. And Shane, you know, what's your experience with that? Are you seeing a lot more guys getting into prototype operations in N scale?
Oh, absolutely. I tell Tony that all the time. You know, I can't imagine the changes that you guys have seen, let alone for myself in the last 10 to 11 years that I've really been serious about it. When I started, I made money to pay for my hobby by doing installs. And, you know, a lot of that was milling and trying to jam stuff in and whatnot. And now, the boards that we've come up with, the LEDs, the quality of the speakers, and all the way down to the detail stuff. I tell Tony all the time, as an operations guy, when I buy stuff, I tend to never really worry too much about the details. But from the magazine standpoint, when you take photos of it and then blow it up on Photoshop to put them into the magazine, and you look at it, you're like, hey, it just looks just like the real thing. It's got all the hoses, all the little bits and pieces.
Right.
You know, that's one of my favorite things about shooting these covers for the magazine too is, you know, when you really sit down and do the scenery, like some of these ones here towards the middle, towards the outside, the big boy one for the N-Scale released early or late last year, I think it was one of my favorites of actually doing all the little people. You know, it's amazing when all the little details are there, how close to real life it looks. I mean, it's just amazing to see the kind of stuff they've come up with in the last couple of years, let alone the last decade, the last couple decades. It's pretty amazing to see those advancements.
Well, it's like when I said we released info about the tank cars, the 13K tank cars. John told me in the beginning these are going to have air hoses and cut levers. And I'm like, so you're telling me I don't need to detail my N scale anymore? You know, the Genesis N scale is going to be very similar to HO Genesis. That's why, you know, we did the rebranding, because we wanted to give the N scalers more. And with Athern N, we still have the standard freight cars, standard locomotives and stuff for the guys that aren't into that much detail. But we really saw the same trends that you're seeing in the magazine, that N scale guys are really getting more and more prototypically minded. They're doing operations. I've operated on some great N scale layouts, both here in the Midwest and in my native home of New Hampshire. And yeah, it's exciting time for N scale. They really are pushing the envelope. So good to hear. We're kind of wrapping down. I mean, I know it's a special weekend for a lot of us. Here's your last chance out there. If you got any questions, I see the comments on locomotives you'd like to see. Again, take that to our email at athernproductsuggestions@athern.com and let our guys know that's what you're interested in. But if you guys have any questions for the three of us, now's your time to ask. Tony, I don't know about you. I'm kind of a slightly different animal. I think the 4th of July is my favorite holiday.
I'm lucky that Bandit doesn't get scared by fireworks. I have so many people with dogs that just say, oh, I can't, you know, the dog goes crazy. We've had fireworks going off for the last week because this is Missouri. And yeah, it doesn't bug him at all. And I think our weather's supposed to be pretty good. I'm sure we'll probably get away if we don't get any rain to do some train watching. But here I live in a small town, Plattsburgh, north of Kansas City. We always have a big fireworks show that's over here at the park on the southeast side of town. So, and I can actually see it from my backyard. So we usually, Bandit and I are out there 4th of July night.
Yeah, as a kid, we have our holidays, Halloween, Christmas, things like that. But as you get older, you start to realize there's certain holidays that are geared more to the adult in us, and that is definitely for me the 4th. I mean, we're outside. It's not. I like warm weather. I'm not much of a cold weather person. It's the height of the rail fan season for me. But you're cooking out. You usually have good friends around for the celebration, and yeah, exactly like you said. Fortunately, my dogs are not afraid of the fireworks either. Shane, how about you? What are your thoughts on the holiday weekend?
I mean, it's a great weekend to get together and try and not lose digits. But no, it's not my favorite holiday, but it definitely ranks right up there. And it's been that way for a long time. Having my old man was in the Army for a long time, so for some people it means a little more than others, and it really reminds you of a lot of things. Get a chance to sit down and think about a lot of stuff over the weekend too.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's always good to remember why we're here.
Mm-hmm.
Why we have the freedom to enjoy our hobby. That's one thing that we haven't talked about, and a lot of people before us have paid that ultimate price, and some still wear that uniform of service. And we want to thank all of our men and women in the service, past and present, and also our law enforcement and EMT and rescue service. Without this, we wouldn't have the freedoms that we have enjoying this great hobby. And so, yeah, as we gather around this weekend, man, it doesn't seem like it's been so many years since the Bicentennial, but it's good to remember the freedoms that we have, and thank our forefathers for the foresight of allowing us to have a great many freedoms.
Very much so, yeah.
I got one here for you, Tony, a question. And this is one I know as an editor, you'd love to answer this. Tony, what is the process to submit articles for publication in HO Collector or any of the other model-related magazines?
I think almost all the White River websites for the different magazines do have a contact link for the editors. And most of the magazines have got pretty active Facebook pages. Model Railroad News does. You can access me through those websites. I think there's a contact. That's where I get a lot of emails from readers and suggestions on articles for either HO Collector or asking about products from Model Railroad News. And same with Facebook, that you can find me on Facebook. And that is where a lot of those ideas, certainly in HO Collector, come from. And it's always fun for me to get to discover or get into some products that maybe I wasn't that knowledgeable about or didn't have that much of in my collection, and have somebody say, hey, did you know about this or that? I'm like, well, yeah, I kind of do, but now what were you telling me? And someone's like, well, now I'm intrigued. And I can end up down a rabbit hole of, well, now I got to collect all of these and see this because I had no idea this was related to that company, or this was the only time this was done. So yeah, I love discovering and finding new stuff. And my co-editor, Tony Lucio in Kentucky, is the same way. So yeah, you can go to hotraincollector.com is the HO Collector page. Again, Facebook too, message on Facebook to us. And if you're interested in reviewing products, or there's new products or things you want more information about, Shane and I are both on Facebook. Model Railroad News is. And again, a lot of times those are great leads for us to find out about things. I'll have somebody ask me, and then I'll say, hey, Shane, this person sent me a link for this or that. Have you seen one of these, or where can we find this, or what do you think of this? And so, yeah, again, there's a lot that kind of communication, email, message. HO Collector, I get letters mailed to me. If anyone remembers that I get handwritten letters from guys saying this or that is what they like and want to see. So, yeah, it's easy to get a hold of me. Address information's on those websites, and I know I definitely do respond to any and all emails I get on things, because again, it's always fun. It's somebody asking about train stuff, like, oh yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, sure. This is neat. So yeah.
Shane and Tony, the next show that Athern's going to be at is the St. Louis RPM meet. I am really looking forward to that. That's always a good show. How about you guys? Are you going to be there?
I was just looking through my closet tonight for our rivet counter baseball jerseys to make sure that I can still fit into mine. And so, yes, we'll be in our rivet counter jerseys, and we will be there. That's July. That's the last couple days of July.
29th and 30th.
29th, isn't it?
29th and 30th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, we'll be there. And Ryan Crawford, one of our contributors at Model Railroad News, is going to be doing a presentation on EMD's RS1325, which was that odd little switch engine that Chicago and Illinois Midland owned. And I've been helping him with, it's only ever been done in brass one time in the late 60s. And I've been helping him with information this week for his presentation. So I know he'll be there. Justin Sobek that contributes is in the St. Louis area. So there'll be lots of Model Railroad News folks around. And yes, we will definitely be there. That's, I think, Shane, that's probably our favorite show. If there's one show of the year, that St. Louis RPM that's the one we can't do without. So
yeah, that is one of my must-hit shows for the year. Every year since we started going there, I think 2018 was my first year, and every year since we did it, it's a good show.
Yeah,
I mean, we have to be there for every minute of it. So much. I'm like, my folks live over in the St. Louis area, and they're only about 45 minutes to an hour north of there, and we could stay there. But Shane and I we get the motel right there by the place.
Yes.
That way you can get up, get the Waffle House, and get right over there first thing and have the whole day. So yeah.
Yep, exactly. Interesting bit about going back to the RS1325. I've actually operated that locomotive.
Oh, the one that's at the museum? Yeah.
At the museum, wow. Yeah. Every once in a while, the museum will have give you an opportunity to operate an actual locomotive. You're with somebody that works for Norfolk Southern, and that's what really sold me on the proto throttle. It's so realistic. So yeah, neat stuff coming up. We're looking forward to being at that show. I hope our fans out there get to go to the St. Louis RPM. If you've never been, you really do need to make an effort to go. It is probably one of the most premier RPMs in the country. Really impressive stuff. And I think it's going to be bigger this year too. So
every year. I mean, every year they seem to expand that Gateway Center. It's actually in Collinsville, Illinois, across the river from downtown St. Louis. It's really easy to get to. You can Google St. Louis RPM. They have a new website this year, but it is an awesome thing to go to. They give away prizes at the end of Saturday afternoon. There's presentations throughout the couple of days. As I say, it's just, I don't know what or why. I mean, I love train shows and new products and things, but man, that one has always been, and I didn't know, I've said this before, there's the one that was in Naperville, like the Chicago area. There's the Bay Area one, in San Francisco. I always assumed ours in St. Louis was just one of the RPMs. Like I had no idea that we had we have the Cadillac of the RPMs. It's like, wow. So yeah, and I had more people tell me that, but it truly is an amazing show. So yeah, we're definitely
looking forward to it. Yeah. Athern will be there. We'll have a booth. We may have a small switching layout with a challenge. So keep your eyes on our social media for that and updates on that. With that, you know what? I think we're going to pull the pin because I think we all hear hot dogs and grills calling us at some point. So I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Tony and Shane, thank you very much for joining me on the gateway to a great long weekend. Tony, any last thoughts before we sign off?
This box, now that I know there's a special box for the Centennial and UP caboose, I'm going to have a hard time sleeping tonight because I'll be thinking about, especially when you said that they really got that 70s look. Man, you're speaking my language. That I now need to go double check what I've ordered on that. So
yeah, everybody check out the pre-orders for the DDA 40X box set Bicentennial, and of course, don't forget we're doing California and California 2 cars in HO in the Genesis line. Go to your dealer. You have until Friday the 29th to pre-order all that. Shane, any last thoughts for the night?
Nothing that strikes me. I appreciate you having me on. Glad I could be on for the first time. And I apologize I couldn't be around for the Bicentennial stuff by 21-ish years. But no, I appreciate you having me on. I had a real good time tonight.
That's okay. You can pick out the Walker for Tony and I in a few years. When we trade the Mustangs in for Lincolns.
I already did that.
Yeah, you've already
on that step.
Yeah, there you are. Everybody, thank you for joining us on this special Athern Extra. I wish you all out there to be safe this weekend, be healthy, be happy. If you get a chance, do some modeling, stay cool, do some modeling in the workshop. Until the next time, everybody be safe and high greens. Good night, everybody.